So now we're going to talk about step 3. Step 3 in the 12-step programs is, so we talked about step 1, we talked about step 2, and I have something to add about that. Now we're going to talk about then step 3. So just to review step 1, step 1, powerless. Step 2, so essentially step 1, I can't do it, my life's a mess, I can't do it. Step 2, came to realize I need some help doing it. Different block. Step 1, I can't do it. I can't do it. Step 1. Step 2, I need some help. I came to realize I needed some help from something outside of me because me isn't working. That's step 2. Big steps. Those are big steps. Step 3 is actually asking. Okay? Step 3 is asking for help from something greater than yourself. The actual ask of helping. So step 2, step 1, powerless. Step 2, recognizing need help. And then step 3 is the actual asking for help. And it's important to break this down because most people, what they do is they just do 1, 2, 3, whoosh. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12. Just, God, take away this addiction. Right? That's what people like to say. A lot of people, they lose their faith in religion and prayer because they pray for, that daddy will stop beating them and this and that, and it never happens. And so you lose your prayer. You lose your faith. And that makes sense. You lose your faith if what you're praying for never happens and you don't understand the bigger picture of it, then this does seem like a crazy world. So the wisdom of the 12-step program is that they broke it down, and these are very important ways that they broke down. They've created chief blocks. Chief blocks that people commonly struggle with. So trauma happens and it creates blockages. And those blockages are like walls, strong, that keep you stuck. That's what trauma does. Trauma and development, trauma and neglect. Remember, it's not just the bad things that happen, it's not enough good things that should have happened that didn't. A lot of those people who are like, I had such a beautiful childhood, but they're like, life is a mess right now. They can't remember much of the trauma, so either there's amnesia, or there is so the inability to remember, or there is just not enough good stuff, not enough love, not enough foundation building to build the security of the person. So it's both things. And that coalesces to create these blocks. How to live life so that you don't have intense experiences of horrible emotions. So you start kind of walking in kind of a weird, contorted way because it just doesn't hurt. Don't move me. I'm fine. You're not fine, but anyone who tries to move you, you're going to yell at them because it hurts to do anything else, right? Anyone who's been to physio knows that, it's if they adjust you, right? And they tell you to use this muscle that you never use, it hurts for a while. You work out and you build your pecs, it hurts. If you've never done push-ups in a long time, it hurts. But that doesn't mean it's bad. But in trauma thinking, if it hurts, run away from it. And so over time, you start walking like this. And that creates arthritis, right? You're not biomechanically neutral anymore. So you start putting more pressure where bones aren't meant to have it. And so then you create wear and tear faster. And then you get real problems. Okay, I'm just kind of just sketching it out for you. So the 12-step program, that's the same is true in how we live our life. Your life, leading a healthy life, a harmonious life, is like walking. You know, if you're walking well, you know, I was listening to this thing about walking. No one pays attention to walking, but there's ways to walk. There's like, you can learn how to walk. So one of the things about walking is walk not like you're pulling yourself forward. You should try this. Instead of walking and pulling yourself, walk and push yourself. Feel yourself pushing off with every step. It's an amazing feeling, actually. You should try it. Because the way we walk is what's comfortable, but what's comfortable may not be good in the long term. But trying that, you're going to get sore muscles, you're going to get sore calves, but in the long term, your walk will be better. So, lead to less arthritis. And so in recovery, we want to be in harmony. We want to be in harmony with life. Why? Because that is the lowest stress way of living. Is when you're in harmony, right? You know the Kung Fu sign? That's harmony. Yin and yang in harmony and balance. Do they have this in the Philippines? You see this? Yeah. It's pretty universal. Lots of people have seen it. So they kid you? Yeah. So these two things, black and white are in harmony, but they're not the same. So you have to learn to live your life this way, because addiction and mental health symptoms are stress-induced. So, you know, I Noam probably gets criticized to some degree by people that say, yeah, Noam just thinks it's all about trauma. Actually, I don't know why people get addicted. To be very clear, because it's not simple. There's genetics, there's generational things, there's trauma things, there's neglect things, but what does it all mix together and this person gets addiction, this person doesn't? I don't know. But everybody gets something, and I lump that together as stress-induced defects. So you have stress-induced defects of psyche. Let's call them that. Yeah, that's good. It's kind of a holistic word. When you're not in harmony with life, you get, and you've had stuff, and whatever reason, why the cracks in your mind have formed. But when you add stress, stress pulls them apart. And that creates the symptoms. So it's fine, right? You know, you kind of, your mind is a little bit cracked like this. That's not a problem. But when you apply stress to it, then all of a sudden there's like a gaping hole, and now this part is separated from this part. I should put narrow this one. With stress. Okay? This is how it is, but no one would ever know it. It's fine. But you add some stress, and now all of a sudden it breaks along the lines. That's why we're so focused on stress. Why these lines exist? Different question. But they exist, and they're stress-induced, and so harmony is how we live in such a way to provide safety and resilience so that you don't get drunk all the time as a way of dealing with your problems, or gamble, or whatever, or get intoxicated. You find other ways, and living in harmony with life requires that we develop a harmonious way of thinking. That's what the 12 steps are designed to create. But they got to go basic, and they got to go step by step, because if you go too fast, you just don't do it. So step 1 is powerlessness. And I'll tell you something about powerlessness before we get to step 3. I didn't cover this last time, but I'm going to cover it now. So, through trauma, we learn that powerlessness is bad. We equate powerlessness to weakness. And weakness leads to hurt. Okay? That's how it goes. We get attacked. Leads to states of powerlessness, which leads to, that don't feel so good. Leads to the conclusion that that's weakness. Pretty quickly you realize weakness means hurt. And then you start avoiding this like the plague. You start avoid. Because because powerless means hurt. We make this connection. Powerless means hurt. It gets wired into your hard brain. And now you avoid situations that can create powerlessness, such as vulnerability, such as talking in front of people about your feelings, such as admitting that you're wrong. Or, quite frankly, we admitted that we had lost control, lost power. We admitted that we were powerless over our addiction or gambling or whatever, and that life had become a manager. That word is right there. And that word represents a chief block. And that block is that powerlessness equals weakness, and weakness equals hurt, and it must be avoided. Is the only option. But what I would like to tell you, actually powerlessness, before it turns into the hurt, there's another way. So most people, it's done this a million times, so this is really hardwired. Powerless leads to hurt, powerlessness leads to hurt. This is why relationships are hard for people. If you're not willing to surrender to the other person, I'm like, how the heck are you going to let anybody close? They're not going to trust you any more than you trust them. You're going to give somebody a hug, but be ready to punch them in the face? What kind of hug's that? That's what you do, though. Or you just, relationships are all about sex. Skip all the touchy-feely stuff. Sex isn't very good if you skip all this touchy-feely stuff. But if you're hardwired to believe that that's true, then you will. And so you create these unfulfilling relationships at every level because you're approaching it like this. Because powerlessness is the block. But let me tell you something. It's very important. Powerlessness, this is critical. Powerlessness actually creates a choice. So there's two kinds of powerlessness. There's the forced upon you, and there's the chosen. A child may have a hard time understanding that. Ona ji? Aajo, baijo. To late nahi hona dora. The powerlessness. There's any time in that state of oh my God, I'm suffering, that you can make a choice. So as a child, these states where you're attacked or you try to help somebody and they don't get help or they don't want it, these are oftentimes forced upon you. An example is remember, it's not just attack, it's failed rescue. Failed rescue also creates this state. So for example, so this is a common trauma thing that we see. Oldest siblings are being forced to look after younger siblings. You see that? Older siblings looked after younger ones. So the eldest becomes like mom number 2 or dad number 2, but doesn't have the power of dad, but behaves like dad. Oftentimes dad's like away somewhere. It's not available. So the eldest son has to then look after the younger people, not younger siblings. So they eat your food. Dad wants me to tell you to eat your food. I'm not eating your food. But I have to get you to eat the food. Otherwise I'm in trouble. You feel the tension of that? That's failed rescue. You have no control over that person eating the food or not. It's out of your control. They're going to eat or they're not going to eat. Oftentimes it's because of the parenting that kid doesn't want to eat, and you're not responsible for that. But you're being held responsible. And then over time you force yourself. You tell yourself you're a bad person unless you get that right, and then you mess them up. Right? This is kind of how it goes. Sorry if this is triggering to you. But it's important that you understand powerlessness comes from people beating on you, but also from the things that you've done, the impossible scenarios that you've been put in. But at every state, okay, this is critical, at every state in the journey of powerlessness, there is these two things. If it's a forced state and you stay in a forced state, it will lead to hurt, and you will do what you've always done. Just perpetrate on self, on others. There's a video on that. But you can choose. When you're in a situation of powerlessness, you can choose to say, okay, I'm in this. I'm going to surrender to this. You can acknowledge it. You can choose it. And what's going to happen is all of the pressure that's forcing the cycle to go down into this, powerless, weakness, hurt, perpetration on self and others, hurting yourself or hurting others. That's really what all behaviors come down to, fundamentally. You can break them down like that. So gambling hurts self and others, right? Like, drinking hurts self and others, right? And like behaviors are intermixed that way, but it's all about hurting yourself and others. But if you, at any moment, you make a choice that, yeah, I am powerless. I'm just trying to explain why this step 1 works, to take off the burden, because millions of people agree to that. AA has a lot of history. There's evidence. And like I said in the last video, if it works for one human, it works for them all. Your blocks are different. As a human mind, body, spirit complex that you are, you're not different. You're exactly the same as the Joe and Bob and Sally. Everybody's the same in terms of the core features of the mind, body, spirit complex. The structure. Now the content is different. But that doesn't mean it's like my gravity and your gravity are different. Excuse me? I'm under the same gravitational force as you are. I might experience it differently. Some people like to skydive. I'm not into that. They liked gravity that way. I'm good. But that doesn't change the fact that gravity exists and it pulls us all down. Does it change the fact that as a person of mass, I have my little bit of gravity too? I can pull people too. Gravity is gravity. It's a law. It's a fundamental law. And a lot of the people who are stuck in life think they can't find the right thing for them, but I would actually suggest the principles governing recovery are exactly the same. And so anyone who's become happy and they were miserable, you should think about learning from them. Everyone has someone in their life that was miserable, horrible, messed up, and then they became happy. You can learn something, and then you can think, no, that doesn't work for me. Actually, what I'm telling you, and you don't have to listen to me, but I'm just giving you a road to freedom, which is the same thing that worked for them could work for you, if you're willing to look at your blocks. And powerlessness is a big one. When you choose powerlessness, you embrace that, you create a pathway out, and that leads to freedom. Because if you're not in control, someone else has to be. And guess what? There is something else. Higher power, God, spirit, universe. There's so much order to the universe that it's impossible to think there cannot be something. So when you embrace that, like, man, I don't know what to do. My life is a mess. I've broken in pieces. I'm this guy. Stress plus happened. I've broken up into pieces. Or lady. Something else has to be. When you can make that statement, I'm powerless, and my life is unmanageable, you will get freedom. That's what that gives you. Because if someone else, if you're not in control, someone else has to be. Something else has to be. And you don't have to have your life fall apart to get there. Sooner you get there, the better. Sooner is better than never. Get there at 70, get there at 80, get there at 90, get there at 20. The sooner you get there, the better. I live my life like this. Someone comes to me giving me a laundry list of their problems, in my mind, I'm like, I'm powerless over this. And that gives freedom. Those things don't attach to me. Because it's true. And anything in you that thinks otherwise is false. You heard that straight. You may not like it, but it's true. Powerlessness is a fundamental sort of thing in that dance of two people in relationship to each other. This person in the white has no power over this person in the black. So as this thing, because these things are spinning, right? These discs they're spinning, right? It's not like it's just staying there, it's spinning. As this thing moves this way, this is moving this way. It's harmony, right? Like two people dancing. In order to dance a waltz with somebody, you got to move back, they got to move forward. Otherwise you break. And what I'm trying to tell you is that you're dancing with something in life. Something's kept you from being obliterated. Something's kept you from suicide. Something's kept you from death, overdose. Think about your life and just think to yourself, really? I've gotten here all by myself? Don't believe me. Evaluate it. Be a scientist. Come to your own conclusion. And when you do make a choice in a state of powerlessness, you will get relief. That relief will give you then access to the next step, which is coming to realize that you need help. Maybe from something that you've been getting help from all along. Which will lead to asking for help. Which is as simple as that. God, please help me. Or sacred power, or ethereal connectedness, or share, because you're not me, and I clearly don't got it well, so that chair over there, maybe you got it, because you probably do a better job than me. That'll work, if you believe it. It may sound ridiculous, but and the yogi would always say, if you don't see God in all, you can't see God at all. It's true, and it's true of inanimate objects, it's true. So So don't laugh at that. It actually works. This is the systematic way, and then just see what happens. And if you don't believe in step 1, 2, and 3, that's okay. Set an intention. Universe, whatever my blocks that Dr. Gill's saying I have in step 1, 2, and 3, can you heal those? If I have them, I don't know. That'll work. You just have to repeat it a lot. That's the practical formula. The only way to get out of a state of powerlessness and unmanageability is to surrender. And surrendering, you break the forced loop. As long as you force, you're coerced to be in a state, someone else did something, you did something that you had to do because you're programmed that way, and it led you to a state of like frustration and confusion. As soon as you say, I choose this, I am here. I'm powerless over this. It's not because of them doing this or that. That may be true. That's their journey. I'm powerless right now. When you make that choice and you make that declaration, the weight, if the theory is right, the weight should come off your shoulders. And so don't believe me. Just ask and see if it's true. Next time you're in a state, never believe anything I say or anybody. Test it. That's what you have to do. I've done that a lot. I test my teachers. I test the teachings. I test everything. Long before I say anything to any of you, I test to see if it's true. I've tested the harmony thing. It's true. I encourage you to test. Next time, powerlessness states are everywhere. They happen so quick. You know, your mom puts you on the phone and then she starts ranting at you and like bring out all that old stuff. Okay, so here's the test. As she's doing that, say to yourself a little mantra. I'm powerless over this. I have no control. I have no control. I have no control over what she's doing, what she's saying, how she's feeling. And just as she's ranting, you're saying this. And when the phone call ends, see if you are less stressed out. That's simple. I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm not asking you to have a come to Jesus moment. Is that true? Test it. Build your evidence. Okay, next time you're on the phone call with her. Okay, yeah, I'm powerless. See, hey, nature, sacred power, God, Jesus, Vaheguru. Can you help me out here? Because I don't know what to do with all this toxicity I'm listening to. I'm powerless over it. Let the conversation end. Assess your body. Am I any less stressed out right now? You have to prove these things to yourself. And as you prove these things to yourself, you'll be more willing to admit to yourself the areas that you're not. And then you'll be willing to identify and work on those. That's how it works. That's the secret of it. It's not much of a secret. You got to start somewhere, and wherever you're at, it's a good place to start. So, I know today we said we talk about step 3. We will talk about step 3, but probably we have talked about step 3 in asking for help, and that's the last part. If you've done 1 and 2, this is easy. If you've done 1 and 2 real good, and you've broken down your blocks, I usually tell people to do a prayer for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Even if they don't believe in God, universe, help me deal with my block around identifying myself as powerless. Say that for 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. Whether you believe it or not, doesn't matter, because obviously you have a block, right? Blocks? Yeah, everyone's got blocks. We're not in disagreement about that. Everyone knows they're messed up at some level. No one thinks they have it fully right, so just put that to the test. Universe, help show me my blocks around this powerlessness thing. Help show me my blocks around asking for help. That was step 2. You know, the block there is asking for help is weakness. That's the block. You know, having a phobia around God and divinity and stuff, that's a block. If it's a block, it can be targeted. If it can be targeted, something's going to change if you deal with it. And if you use an affirmation like that, universe, help me deal with this block that I have around this, and just set that intention for a couple of weeks, something should change if the theory is true. I know it's true, but you don't. You need to test that. Confirm that. See if it works. Ardas. Kam kar diya jane. You have to confirm that. And when you confirm it, you will find reliability. You will find stability that you've never had before because you've relied on others to fulfill your needs, or drugs, or alcohol, or gambling. None of those things are dependable. So that's why the steps talk about this in this way. So today we've talked about step 1, step 2, powerlessness. We've kind of weaved them through because these are really critical. Everyone's like on a rush. No one's in a rush to do an inventory of their life, but some people are. They're like, I want to get on it. Yeah, I believe in God. Yeah, I'm good. And then they go and they fail, and they never want to come back to the 12-step program again. It's a common story. Hopefully they don't die before the next time they're willing to try. That's a tragedy. Because these things work. These things that work for one person work for everybody. They're principles. You have to fit them to your mind. They're principles for identifying chief blocks that affect addiction and mental health and complex PTSD, chronic pain, whoever. And now I'm being direct. Forgive me, but this is what I have to do. So, that was a good lecture. Thank you. Forgive me if I've misspoke, and we will leave it at that.